I'm here to talk about managing microservice at scale at IntiSwitch. At the keynote, we talked about our API marketplace. I'm here to tell you what powers that API marketplace. All right. So with me today is Tochukwu Achebe. My name is Adeshegun Adeyemo. We'll be together presenting the topic. All right, a little bit about me. I head engineering at IntiSwitch, a group called Industry Ecosystems and Platforms. So let's get right into it because I don't have much time. So when we say microservices, I want to believe that most of us are familiar with microservices. You know, a service that does one thing and one thing only, right? But the truth is, we've all been building microservices. It gets to a certain stage where you have a lot of them, hundreds of microservices. So how do you manage them? If you have 1, 2, 10 microservices, yeah, you are able to more or less manage them. But then before you know it, you have hundreds of them, and then how do you manage, you know, the complexity that comes with it? All right, so we didn't just start with microservices. The company started about 22 years ago. So there was nothing like a microservices architecture then. And so this was like our journey. So that's what we call the modular monolithic architecture, where you essentially just build one application. It has a database, and then you have users, right? But the thing is, for you to scale, especially when we started growing, if you are a startup, yes, it's good to start with a monolithic application. But then once you begin to, you know, grow, you know, the startup and all that, there is a level you get to where you need to rethink the architecture. So we started transitioning into what I call a naive microservices architecture, where we essentially just, you know, started creating, you know, services, APIs. APIs are calling themselves. There was no structure. But I can tell you today that we've been able to kind of, you know, manage the kind of, or the number of microservices that we create at the company. So when you think about a monolithic architecture, this is what it looks like, where you have one giant application. Even though it is modular, you have some set of services just within the same application, and then you communicate with other monolithic applications. So the problem with this is that you know, there's tight coupling, so you can see the different calls, multiple calls. If there's a change in one particular service, say service D.1, you have to go and make a change in service B.2. So, like I've said, I mean, of course, there are certain pros for you know, using a monolithic architecture. So you have, you know, it's very simple to test. It's just one application that you just have to test. Simple to develop, simple to deploy. But then the problem is that to scale a monolithic application, you have to scale everything. If you look at monolith A and you need to scale service A.2, you have to scale everything, right? Another problem is that you can't easily adopt new technologies, because what that means is you actually have to, you know, use one technology stack. So if you are using Java, or you are using Python, you are using Node.js, so it's just one stack. So another problem is that if you need to deploy anything, you have to deploy everything, right? Another thing is, as a developer, let's say you are joining the team for the first time, you actually have to download all the code just to make a change. So we transitioned from that to this, and then we quickly realized that we are just calling services all over the place, right? There was no structure. This was chaos, right? So these were some of the concerns that we had. It was difficult to manage configuration for all the microservices that we have. So imagine you have 200 plus microservices and you need to make a change on one service, but it requires you to make a change in 10 other microservices. So it's a big problem. Service discovery and load balancing. If you are running an environment where the IP changes or the URL changes, dynamically. So what that means is you really need to look for an architecture or use for tools that will help you to be able to manage that. Because of time, I might not be able to go through all this, but what is important is that you get to a stage where you really need to begin to think, about how to manage the complexity. So what we decided to do was to look at what we call ancillary services to help you manage your microservices architecture, from things like log analytics to config service to service discovery and distributed tracing and all that. So at the end of the day, we layer an API gateway on top. When we say API marketplace, so this is how our architecture looks like. So on the API marketplace, where you see different APIs for certain fintech products, so this is what powers it. So from the previous architecture, I mentioned the auth service. So auth service is like an authentication service, identity and access management. It is similar to, if you heard about Auth0, you've heard about, some of these identity platforms, or even sign in with Facebook or sign in with Google and so on and so forth. So we built our own server called the InterSwitch Passport, and it is what we use to authenticate the communications between the microservices that we have. So service discovery essentially is about dynamically identifying the other microservices that we have, on our network without actually knowing exactly, their location. So all you need to do is ask a discovery server, and then you have all the details of a particular microservice. So if the configuration changes and all that, you don't need to worry about that. So another thing I want to speak to is logging, where you have a lot of microservices communicating, but you need to find a way to kind of troubleshoot the application. So if something goes wrong, what you need to be able to do is actually finding out what really is wrong. But then when you have 10 microservices where a transaction has happened, it has touched many services, so how do you link that particular transaction across all the services? So this is what this helps us to achieve. Also, metrics as well. You want to know how your microservices are performing, or which one of them is not performing very well. You need additional memory. You need more storage. You need certain metrics like counters, gauges, and all that. This is the architecture that we use to be able to have a view, into our application. So we essentially instrument our microservices. So we also do tracing, where when a particular call comes in, we are able to kind of track that particular transaction across all the services that we have on the network. At the end of the day, what this gives us is, especially the latencies between the different applications, a particular application that is very slow, and so on and so forth. So don't let me bore you with this. So at the end of the day, this is how we have architected, our solution to be able to support the API marketplace. Like I said, so we have API gateway in front. API gateway is the single entry point to all the services that we have. So at the end of the day, you don't get to see all these microservices. What you just see will just be APIs, and you just communicate over APIs. All right, so I'll be leaving the stage for my colleague. Yeah. So he's going to talk about API Marketplace and how microservices are powering it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So we've spoken about the API marketplace. We've spoken about microservices. However, I'm just going to speak about access, right? And why access is very important for our ecosystem today. Today, we have the primary fintechs up here. The Flutterwaves, the Paystacks of this world. We have these guys primarily using our services today. However, what's more important to us at this point in terms of access is to give our developer community the right tools to build the right services or to solve the right problems in our society today. And we have basically used our API products to basically function in this format, right? And what we have done around our API products is that we have categorized them to enable users to use them in the format of KYC services, lending services, payments, which is one of the core infrastructures that powers our API marketplace, our vast services and issuing, right? Now, I'm not going to bore you with our numbers because obviously you know our numbers. However, I'm going to speak more in depth into our API marketplace. Our API marketplace typically was built in the essence that we wanted to create access to each and every one of you. We wanted to make sure that everyone has access to these quintessential tools and services that we have built and we have given to other customers, the big guys, the unicorns that you have today, the Flutterwave, the Paystacks and the like, so that you can also build, right? And what we have done primarily recently is that we have created API docs and we have categorized them into 3 different subsections. Now you would find that we have the getting started subsection that typically speaks to how our APIs are defined, whether they are RESTful or whether they are SOAP. It typically tells you how to sign up as a business, also how to sign up as a developer, and it also gives you a wing back on how to go live with each and every API that you might select, right? Now, how cool is that, right? Now, what we have also done is that for you to be able to accept payments, right, we have basically created that in various formats, right? If you want to collect payment as an in-store merchant, right, we have POS devices for you guys. We have also decided that for the web merchants, if I were to collect payment on my website today, how do I collect payment? So we built that infrastructure right for you guys. Also, we have done that for the mobile payments as well. But we weren't stopping there, right? So we decided to continue to add value-added services. And what we have done with our value-added services today is basically call out different types of value-added services that will create some value for your business. And you might not need some form of licensing for this, right? So we've created SMS today. We've created bills payment. On our bills payment rails, we have over 8,000 billers. Your DSTV, your GoTV, and the likes. We have KYC, send money, lending services, and cardless services. And I'll speak a bit on cardless services, right? Now, cardless services is one innovation that InterSwitch prides itself on. With a cardless service, what you primarily can do is create a 16-digit PIN, and you can typically just go and withdraw money at your bank. What this means for you is that using our APIs, you could typically be able to create a form of token for your customers, for them to be able to withdraw money at ATMs, at cash out points, or even with the betting partners as well. Finally, we'll speak about our API references. For business owners here, and typically people that they probably do not have any technical experience, what we have done is that we have created an API reference that typically enables you to basically try our endpoints by basically sending a try it request upon our request, and typically you get a response there. Finally, what we have done to improve access to all of this is we have created a developer community. This developer community typically improves innovation, 1. 2, what it does for you is that you can simply speak to anyone at InterSwitch at any time that would typically give you a roadmap on how to go live, or which tools to use, or which tools and services you might want to use. Finally, before I leave the stage, I would typically like to talk about the commissions that we are typically giving to developers today. Developers are quintessential to what we are trying to do with the API marketplace, right? And our API marketplace will be going live very soon in the first quarter of next year. However, at the moment we're onboarding customers. However, it's not self-serviced at the moment. What we have typically done is that we have created some form of commission around this, and we have made sure that every developer that brings in any business earns some form of interest at least for 3 years, right? How cool is that? Also, what we have done is that we have categorized that into different formats. What this means for you, you might find out. Just come down to our booth and just find out what that means for you. Finally, thank you very much. Thank you for listening and enjoy yourself. Oh, finally, questions. If anyone has any questions, I'm willing to answer. Alex is willing to answer your questions. So I'm just going to put on my headphones, and you can basically just ask questions that you might need to answer. So any questions? InterSwitch. Any questions regarding the keynote speech, the API marketplace, developers, creating access for developers? Any questions around that? And also around microservices as well. Any questions? No questions.
Okay.
Okay.
How do you deal with technical debt?
Technical depth. Okay.
All right.
Alex, you want
can
to
you hear me? All right. Okay. So the way, I mean, there are many ways, and of course, it depends on the situation, right? And it's on service by service basis. So typically, there are some applications that they are legacy, they work, right? And the saying is that if it works, don't touch it, right? But then, if you want to modernize such applications, what you can then do is to maybe build some wrapper services such that, so say for example, the only way to communicate with it is SOAP, you know. You don't really want to expose SOAP to, you know, developers of nowadays, right? So you just want to do RESTful API. So what you just do is to create like an adapter kind of pattern where you adapt the SOAP to REST, essentially. So today, of course, we do have some services where fundamentally, you know, they have issues, right? They are flawed, maybe in many ways. They were built at a time when we haven't seen this much growth. So essentially for those kind of services, the best way to go is to actually rewrite them, right? And what that means is once you get the management buy-in, right, you essentially allocate time, energy, and effort, resources to be able to rewrite those services. So those are some of the ways in which we pay back our technical debt. And then another way is to kind of, you know, be, you know, abreast of what is going on in the, you know, in the industry, right? I think ThoughtWorks has something called technology radar, where, you know, you can kind of at least have a sense as to, okay, in what direction, you know, is the industry moving when it comes to certain areas in, you know, software development, and then we tap into that. So, for example, I talked about microservices, right? There was a time when it was like, oh, don't adopt yet, you can try, because, you know, maybe the tooling wasn't really ready at that time, right? So, but immediately, so for example, we started using, you know, Docker even before it was cool. We started using Kubernetes before it was cool, just experimenting, you know, and all that. And then when the tools were like, you know, for production use, so we were able to take advantage of that. So today we run Kubernetes, right? In fact, like I would say 70 to 80% of our services run on Kubernetes. But then we still have legacy applications that, you know, you wouldn't just want to ship, you know, ship, what's it called? Legacy applications into into Kubernetes, because they were not really built for that kind of environment, right? So those are one of the, some of the ways in which we pay back the people.
Does that answer your question? Thank you very much. Any other questions? Please note, these questions are from all three presentations that we have given: the keynotes, the microservice, and this important conversation that we're raising in terms of access to our services. So, any questions?
I guess okay, yeah, we have some.
Okay. I can hear you.
He's waiting for Mike.
Oh.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to know if the services of InterSwitch covers other countries in Africa, or is it just Nigeria? And if it does, I want to know if there are any specifications or requirements before you can reach these places in Africa.
Interesting question. And I'll answer that question in two ways, right? For every country or for every region that you're trying to enter to use their services, you must primarily have some form of, will I say, KYC with them, right? Typically, you're sharing your information with them so they basically can identify that you're a user of their services, right? So that's the first thing, right? Also, the second thing is InterSwitch is actually in 6 geopolitical zones across the world. In Africa today, we're in 5 countries, right? So what this means for InterSwitch is that people basically use our services across board, across Africa, right? Whilst some of our APIs might typically be for Nigeria, however, what we have done is that we have APIs basically specific for these other countries that we have. For example, Gambia. Another good example is Kenya, right? We also have another big pioneer company as well in Uganda as well. So if that answers your question, does it? Thank you very much. Any other questions? Questions? Any other questions? Okay.
All right. I guess maybe that's it. So we can't wait to see what you guys are able to build using our APIs, and then like we've shared some of the technologies, architectures, supporting our growth, using microservices. We also use other different kind of architectures as well. So I hope this has been great for you, and thank you for your time. Thank you for finding our presentation worthy of your time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, and thank you very much. Finally, from me, at the API Marketplace, one thing that we are quite bullish about is that we want to create partnerships for everyone, right? And what these partnerships mean is that all our services, we're putting them on API Marketplace, but then we're not stopping there. What this means primarily for every developer in this room is that if your APIs are good enough and they solve any quintessential problem, you could typically send a message to partnerships@interswitchgroup.com, or typically just come on our API Marketplace and onboard your API. What this means for you is that you're going to start earning some money as people basically start using your APIs to grow, right? And what does that mean for you? You basically have access to our network, and as we have said, our network is typically as huge as this. Imagine your APIs on this kind of service or on our marketplace. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you.